So with Crisis on Infinite Earths officially over and wrapped up, CW fans and fans of the Arrowverse in general have actually been wondering, what's the next crossover going to be? Now, basically, the Arrowverse leader, if you will, Mark Guggenheim, said that the next crossover isn't going to be as big as Crisis. So, some of my choices here may seem a bit out of character. I'm not ruling them out for possibly a crossover in the future, because Guggenheim has said that because the past crossovers built up to Crisis, the next few crossovers will have to build up to an even bigger event. So what could that big event be? So I'm going to speculate on some crossover ideas that I had. So my first idea was the Crime Syndicate. For those of you who don't know who the Crime Syndicate are, they're basically from an alternate Earth where the Justice League are evil. So instead of Superman, we have Ultraman. Instead of Wonder Woman, we have Superwoman. Instead of Green Lantern, we have Powering. Very original name there. Instead of the Flash, we have Johnny Quick. Instead of Firestorm, we have Deathstorm. And in this universe, Owlman is actually Batman. Now, could the Crime Syndicate make a future appearance in the Arrowverse? I would like to think so. And the reason being is, I think they'd be an interesting addition to the Arrowverse, because we've seen evil versions of certain characters in the Arrowverse, i.e. Savitar in The Flash Season 3, and I think it would be a unique opportunity for the CW to introduce the Crime Syndicate at some point down the line. So my next idea was to include Darkseid. Now, I wrote this video after reading some news reports on the internet that Darkseid probably wouldn't be introduced straight away, because Mark Guggenheim said that a big Crisis on Infinite Earths level crossover probably wouldn't be for possibly another few years. And that's because, well, The Flash actually teased Crisis on Infinite Earths with the newspaper headline with The Flash vanishing during some sort of crisis. We now know what happened there, and while it wasn't Earth 1 Barry Allen or Earth Prime Barry that we know, it turned out to be the Earth 90 Flash from the old 90s TV show. So the question is, will Darkseid make an appearance in the Arrowverse? I would like to think so. Mainly because Darkseid would be an interesting addition to the Arrowverse, because he's such a really compelling villain, and has a lot of history with heroes in the Arrowverse like Superman. Now, could Darkseid make an appearance? Definitely, because the crossovers got big over time. Well, they got bigger and more massive over time, because we had the introduction of Barry Allen in the first crossover, then we had Arrow vs. Flash, then we had Legends of Today / Legends of Yesterday, which introduced Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Vandal Savage. Then the crossover after that, we also got the introduction of Supergirl into the Arrowverse. However, we kind of got that with an episode of Supergirl, when Barry Allen accidentally travels to Earth 38. Then the crossover after that Supergirl crossover was Invasion, and that introduced the Dominators. To the best of my understanding, I believe they are original villains for the crossover. Then we got Crisis on Earth X, which, not gonna lie, it was one of my favourite crossovers. Then we got Elseworlds, which I think a lot of people are pretty much on toward the bad side of, because they didn't really go to any other universes. And then, after Elseworlds, we of course got the big Crisis crossover, which involved Spectre and the sacrifice of Oliver Queen. So, Darkseid making an appearance, I think, may be the big Crisis on Infinite Earths level event. So my next idea for a potential crossover was officially introducing the Titans and their existence into the actual Arrowverse. Now, would the CW do this at some point down the line? I do definitely think they should, because I'm just going to throw up a quick spoiler alert here for Crisis. It has been confirmed that the Titans are in the Arrowverse, along with the Green Lantern show and Doom Patrol. And also the Stargirl show has been confirmed to be a part of the mix as well. So, could the Titans possibly make a potential appearance? I definitely think they will. And I think this could take the spot of the Flash vs. Arrow crossover, because we had Flash vs. Arrow there, and I think the Flash vs. Arrow crossover going forward now will potentially be Titans versus, well, the other Arrowverse. And while that would be a bit tricky to explain, and seeing their reaction to, well, Nightwing, I think it would be really cool, because we could also have interactions between Brenton Thwaites' Nightwing and Ruby Rose's Batwoman, which would be really, really cool to see on screen. And not to mention, we haven't actually gotten an accurate Arrowverse version of the Teen Titans before, so this would be a really cool idea to properly introduce them into the Arrowverse. So another idea I had for a potential crossover was perhaps properly introducing Green Lantern into the Arrowverse mix. Now I'm going to do a quick rundown of the new universes we know about in Crisis going forward. So we've got Earth Prime, which merged the worlds of the main Arrowverse characters, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and a few others into the mix. And Earth 12, we are introduced to the Green Lantern Earth, which I'm assuming is where the HBO Max show is going to take place. A lot of people somewhat misconstrue this as saying that the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie takes place on Earth 12. Thankfully, that's not the case, and a lot of people have corrected people in the comment section of certain videos relating to this part in Crisis, saying that this is the Green Lantern HBO Max show, it's not the Ryan Reynolds thing. And while I think they'll introduce Hal Jordan Green Lantern into the mix, the Green Lantern in the Arrowverse already. So it's been officially confirmed that John Diggle is now Green Lantern, and a lot of Arrowverse fans are beyond excited to see him in a potential crossover. Now, some people have been wondering, where is John Diggle Green Lantern going to show up? Some people have said he's going to get his own Green Lantern show. I'm not sure about that, given that the HBO Max show is going to come out soon. Some people have said that he could just debut in the crossovers and we wouldn't know what he was doing. That I highly doubt. However, one of the biggest rumours, and I'm hoping this is true, is that John Diggle will potentially be a side character in the new Superman and Lois show. If you don't know what's happening there, it's been confirmed that Superman, Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, and Elizabeth Lois Lane are going to star in their own CW spin-off. Obviously, it's going to be a spin-off from Supergirl, so we wouldn't need to have Superman showing up in Supergirl once in every while. Superman would have his own show where we could see his stories and fight some of his more popular villains. So, is it possible that we could see maybe John Diggle Green Lantern show up once in a while during the show? I definitely think so. However, with crossover, I think Diggle may potentially be introduced as a member of the Arrowverse Justice League. However, the CW can't legally use that name because, well, the DCEU kinda owns the rights to it. So I think they're going to just stick to calling it the Super Friends for now. And side note, if you saw that Glee twist at the end of the crossover, then you're a true Arrowverse fan. And a true DC fan. Another idea I had for a crossover was maybe introducing the Dark Multiverse into the mix. So for those of you who don't read the newer Rebirth DC comics, I'll do a bit of explaining here. The Dark Multiverse is made up of basically nightmares of the main multiverse in DC Rebirth. And what's that about? Well, the whole Dark Multiverse event mainly centers around the Batman nightmares. So we're introduced to the Dark Knight's Metal characters in there. I did a whole video on the origins of those characters if you want to go check it out. It was part of Batman Week as well. So, put the Dark Knight up as a potential plot point in a future crossover. And it could potentially be linked to maybe the Crime Syndicate as well. However, the real question is, will the Arrowverse ever introduce Batman into the mix? So there are a couple reasons for and against introducing Batman into the Arrowverse. So the first reason for is because it would be really cool to see the Dark Knight interacting with Superman on TV in actual live action television, because we haven't necessarily seen that officially. I mean, we've seen Batman and Superman interact on the big screen, and also in several animated movies and animated shows, like the Justice League show, and not to mention Justice League Unlimited and Death of Superman and all those other DC animated projects. So, could Batman potentially make an appearance in the Arrowverse? Now, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but I'm not sure if it's possible. Mainly because the CW doesn't really own the TV rights to Batman. And mainly because the DCE is only allowed to use Batman in their films. And I'm not sure that the timing would be right, because if there were to be another crossover where Batman would debut, it would most likely be around the same time that Robert Pattinson's Batman film comes out. And assuming that there's a crossover toward the end of 2020, I doubt Batman will be introduced here. However, we'll have to see any crossover news come out in the next few months, once we eventually get news of a crossover. However, if Batman were to show up in the Arrowverse, remember I say if, he were to show up in the Arrowverse, Tom Welling, yes, the Smallville Superman Tom Welling, would apparently play him. So, could Tom Welling pull off maybe playing Arrowverse Batman? I'm kind of mixed on this, because a lot of people mainly see Tom Welling as Superman, mainly because of his role as Clark Kent in Smallville, and I'm not really sure that he has, well, the darkness in him to actually play a conflicted character like Batman. However, there is also the possibility that Batman Beyond could show up in the Arrowverse. Now, I'm going to have to do a bit of explaining around this one as well. So, for a while now, it has been speculated and actually confirmed that Green Arrow and the Canaries, the new Arrowverse show, aside from Superman and Lois, is actually going to be set in 2040, along with the flashbacks. So, if you didn't follow Arrow Season 7 and a part of Arrow Season 8, there were certain flash forwards that showed us introductions to new characters. One of those characters was Mia Smoke, or Mia Queen, who is Oliver and Felicity's daughter from the future. Now, during the events of Arrow Season 8, Mia, along with Connor Hawke, or John Diggle Jr., and William Clayton, Oliver's son from a one-night stand, were all transported to the year 2019, which was, at the time, present day, during the events of Arrow Season 8. And another thing to note is, should Green Arrow and the Canaries actually take place in 2040, then we could possibly see Batman Beyond pop up. If we were to see Batman Beyond pop up in the Arrowverse, he probably will have been in active duty for possibly over a year at that point, because during the Batman Beyond TV series, most of the parts where Terry McGinnis is Batman take place in the year 2039, and the Arrow flashbacks, well, flash forwards, take place in the year 2040. So should Terry McGinnis show up, he will probably have been in active duty as Batman for possibly over a year. And while Gotham itself hasn't made an appearance in the Arrowverse, excluding Elseworlds, then, well, excluding Elseworlds and Batwoman, we could possibly see Batman Beyond pop up at some point. However, if old Bruce Wayne shows up as well, then that we don't know about. So those are my thoughts on the next big crossover for the Arrowverse. What do you think will happen next? Do you think the Titans will show up in the Arrowverse? Do you think that John Diggle will potentially show up as Green Lantern at some point during this time? And do you think Batman will show up in the Arrowverse? And if so, do you think Tom Welling will play him? So that's pretty much all the content we're going to cover in this video, but before we go, I have a little announcement I want to talk about quickly. So if you follow us on Instagram, well, Crafting Bro Studios on Instagram, you will know that we pushed the Heist 4 back to March 2020 this year. And you can probably tell from what you're seeing on the screen now, we're rebooting the Heist franchise. So sadly, this does mean that the Heist 4 is cancelled. Sorry that I'm going to be cancelling the Heist 4, because it really was going to be really good. And while I'm cancelling the Heist 4, the reboot means that you'll get to see some different things with the new trilogy I'm probably developing. However, I'm not sure if it will be a trilogy yet. I'm just waiting to see how the reboot turns out. And then potentially I may continue with more installments. And yes, this does mean that the Heist Adventures spin-off is cancelled as well.